Bhagawan is always with you, in you, and you are yourself Bhagawan. To realize this, it is neither necessary to resign your job nor run away from home. Renunciation does not imply apparent divesting of costumes, family ties, home, and so on, but renunciation of desires, affection, and attachment. There is no need to resign your job. Only resign yourself to God, the bearer of the burden of all. One who renounces desires actually merges in the world and expands their love to the whole universe. Expansion of love and affection would be a far better term for a true devotee of God than renunciation. For one who renounces the immediate ties actually extends the bonds of affection and love to a wider world beyond the borders of caste, creed, and race. A sannyasi who apparently casts away their clothes and leaves their home does not do so out of aversion to their immediate relations, but because of the expansion of their love to others around them. When this expansion comes, one does not feel that one is running away from home. Instead, one drops from it like a ripe fruit from a tree. Until then, it would be folly to leave one's home or job. Why do you think of yourself as a householder? Similar thoughts that you are a sannyasi, a wandering monk, will haunt you, even if you go out as a sannyasi. Whether you continue in the household or renounce it and go to the forest, your mind haunts you. The ego is a source of thought. It creates the body and the world, and it makes you think of being a householder. If you renounce, it will only substitute the thought of sannyasa for that of householder. and the environment of the forest for that of the household. But the mental obstacles are always there for you. They even increase greatly in the new surroundings. It is no help to change the environment. The one obstacle is the mind, and it must be overcome, whether in the home or in the forest. If you can do it in the forest, why not in the home? Therefore, why change the environment? Your efforts can be made even now, whatever the environment. The feeling, I work, is the hindrance. Ask yourself, who works? Remember who you are. Then the work will not bind you. It will go on automatically. Make no effort either to work or to renounce. It is your effort which is the bondage. What is destined to happen will happen. If you are destined not to work, work cannot be had, even if you hunt for it. If you are destined to work, you will not be able to avoid it, and you will be forced to engage yourself in it. So leave it to the higher power. You cannot renounce or retain as you choose. The self is all. Are you apart from the self? Or can the work go on without the self? The self is universal, so all actions will go on, whether you strain yourself to be engaged in them or not. The work will go on of itself. Thus Krishna told Arjuna that he need not trouble to kill the Kauravas, because they were already slain by God. It was not for him to resolve the work and worry himself about it. but to allow his own nature to carry out the will of the higher power. Attending to the self means attending to the work. Because you identify yourself with the body, you think that work is done by you. But the body and its activities, including that work, are not apart from the self. What does it matter whether you attend to the work or not? When you walk from one place to another, you do not attend to the steps you take, and yet you find yourself after a time at your goal. You see how the business of walking goes on without your attending to it. So also with other kinds of work. If one holds the self in remembrance, such a person is not concerned with the right or wrong of actions. Their actions are God's, and therefore right. You may remain where you are and go on with work. What is the undercurrent which vivifies the mind, enables it to do all this work? It is the self. So that is the real source of your activity. Simply be aware of it during your work and do not forget it. Contemplate it in the background of your mind, even whilst working. To do that, do not hurry. Take your own time. Keep the remembrance of your real nature alive, even while working, and avoid haste, which causes you to forget. Be deliberate. Practice meditation to still the mind and cause it to become aware of its true relationship to the self, which supports it. Do not imagine it is you who are doing the work. Think that it is the underlying current which is doing it. identify yourself with the current. If you work unhurriedly, recollectedly, your work or service need not be a hindrance. Renunciation is always in the mind, not in going to forests or solitary places or giving up one's duties. The main thing is to see that the mind does not turn outward but inward. It does not really rest with a person, whether they go to this place or that, or whether they give up their duties or not. All these events happen according to destiny. All the activities that the body is to go through are determined when it first comes into existence. It does not rest with you to accept or reject them. The only freedom you have is to turn your mind inward and renounce activities there. There is solitude everywhere. The individual is solitary always. Their business is to find it out within, not to seek it outside themselves. Solitude is in the mind. One might be in the thick of the world and maintain serenity of mind. Such a one is in solitude. Another may stay in a forest, but still be unable to control their mind. Such a person cannot be said to be in solitude. Solitude is a function of the mind. A person attached to desires cannot get solitude wherever they may be, whereas a detached person is always in solitude. work performed with attachment is a shackle, whereas work performed with detachment does not affect the doer. One who works like this is, even while working, in solitude. Why do you think you are active? Take the gross example of your arrival here. You left home in a cart, took a train, alighted at the railway station here, got into the cart there, and found yourself in this ashram. When asked, you say that you travelled here all the way from your town. Is it true? Is it not a fact that you remained as you were, and there were movements of conveyances all along the way? Just as those movements are confounded with your own, so also are the other activities. They are not your own. They are God's activities. As the activities of the wise person exist only in the eyes of others and not in their own, although they may be accomplishing immense tasks, they really do nothing. Therefore, their activities do not stand in the way of inaction and peace of mind, for they know the truth that all activities take place in their mere presence, and that they do nothing. Hence, they will remain as a silent witness of all the activities taking place. It is harder for Westerners to withdraw inwards, as they are mentally overactive, and their energy goes outwards. We must be inwardly quiet, not forgetting the self, and then externally we can go on with activity. Does a man who is acting on the stage in a female part forget that he is a man? Similarly, we too must play our parts on the stage of life, but we must not identify ourselves with those parts. You ask how to remove the spiritual sloth of others. But have you removed your own? Turn your inquiries towards the self. The force set up within you will operate on others also. Why even talk of another? There is only the one. Try to realize that there is no I, no you, no he, only the one self, which is all. If you believe in the problem of another, you are believing in something outside the self. You will best help another by realizing the oneness of everything, rather than by outward activity. A true brahmachari, a celibate, is one who dwells in Brahman. Then there is no question of desires anymore. If there are sexual desires, it exists in the mind. So what is the use to force people to abstain? The householder's life is not a bar, but the householder must do their utmost to practice self-control. If a person has a strong desire for the spiritual or higher life, then the sex tendency will subside. When the mind is destroyed, the other desires are destroyed also. You confess you have committed sexual sin. But even if you have, it does not matter so long as you do not think afterwards that you have done so. The self is not aware of any sin, and renunciation of sex is internal, not merely of the body alone. You are always pure. It is your senses and body which tempt you, and which you confuse with your real self. So first know who is tempted, and who is there to tempt. But even if you do commit adultery, do not think about it afterwards, because you are yourself always pure. You are not the sinner. By rooting out the false idea of the body being the self, you can overcome the sexual desire. There is no sex in the self. Be the self, and then you will have no sexual troubles. Mental fasting is the real aid to curing sexual desire. Fasting is not an end in itself. There must be spiritual development side by side. Complete fasting makes the mind too weak. The spiritual quest must be kept up right through a fast if it is to benefit spiritually. Fasting should be chiefly mental, the abstention from thoughts. Mere abstinence from food will do no good. It will even upset the mind. Spiritual unfoldment will come rather by regulating eating. But if during a fast of 1 month the spiritual outlook has been maintained, the mind will become pure and steady, and remain so. In the early days after my coming here, I had my eyes closed, and I was so deeply absorbed in meditation that I hardly knew whether it was day or night. I had no food and no sleep. When there is movement in the body, you need food. If you have food, you need sleep. If there is no movement, you do not need sleep. Very little food is enough to sustain life. That used to be my experience. Somebody or other used to offer me a tumbler of some liquid diet whenever I opened my eyes. That was all I ever ate. But remember one thing. Except when one is absorbed in a state where the mind is motionless, it is not possible to give up sleep or food altogether. When the body and mind are engaged in the ordinary pursuits of life, the body reels if you give up food and sleep. There are differing theories concerning how much a practitioner should eat and how much they should sleep. Some say that it is healthy to go to bed at 10 p.m. and wake up at 2 a.m. That means that 4 hours sleep is enough. Some say that 4 hours sleep is not enough, but that it should be 6 hours. It amounts to this, that sleep and food should not be taken in excess. If you want to cut off either of them completely, your mind will always be directed towards them. Therefore, the practitioner should do everything in moderation. There is no harm in eating 3 to 4 times a day, but only do not say, I want this kind of food and not that kind, and so on. Moreover, you take these meals in 12 hours of waking, whereas you are not eating in 12 hours of sleep. Does sleep lead you to mukti? It is wrong to suppose that simple inactivity leads one to mukti. Food affects the mind. For the practice of any kind of yoga, Vegetarianism is absolutely necessary since it makes the mind more sattvic, pure and harmonious. It is good to abandon eating flesh gradually and accustom yourself to sattvic foods. However, once you have attained illumination, it will make less difference what you eat, as, on a great fire, it is immaterial what fuel is added. The quality of food influences the mind. The mind feeds on the food consumed. Tobacco is a poison. It is better to do without it. It is good to give up smoking. Many men are enslaved by tobacco and cannot give it up. But tobacco only gives a temporary stimulation, to which there must be a reaction with craving for more. It is also not good for meditation practice. Likewise with meat and alcohol. It is advisable to give them up, because this abstention is a useful aid. The difficulty in surrendering them does not arise because they are really necessary, but merely because we have become inured by custom and habit to them. Generally speaking, the rules of conduct which an aspirant should follow are moderation in food, moderation in sleep, and moderation in speech.